Hi everybody, Sarah from SUPjunkie here, and I am joined today by Keith Moule, who is the race director for Thames 200 Ultra race, which happened last weekend, August time. And if you're watching this on sort of catch up, and it's great to be connected with Keith, not someone who I knew or had heard of, but we're going to learn a little bit about the race, but it's really looking forward to how we can make this race help it develop and paddle sports in general. Nice to see you, Keith. Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you. Thanks ever so much for having us on board.
Pleasure, pleasure. Now, Keith, a little bit about yourself, which I think you ought to tell people. But the one thing that I know about you, having looked you up, is that you broke a very long-standing record on the very sort of infamous Devizes to Westminster race. Can you tell us a little bit about that in particular, but also about your sort of sporting history?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm from a kayaking background and got into the sport when I was about 12, 13 years old. And when I was younger, I was privileged enough to be part of the Great Britain team for marathon and sprint. And I loved it. I love racing. I love being part of it. I love that camaraderie of being part of a training group. And we got quite quick. I'm from Chelmsford Canoe Club, and we had a group of guys who got quite quick before we even really knew too much about racing and what it was all about, and then ended up in the junior British team, and then went on to the under 23s and senior team, and been able to represent my country at European and World Championships. And as I said, it was brilliant. Absolutely loved it. I enjoyed the sprint side of things, but I was always better at the marathons. I always found I could rock up to the marathons and do quite well without really focusing too much on that distance training. But you kind of need that speed background even on the marathon side of things. And then a close friend of mine said, "Well, the older you get, the further you have to paddle in order to stay good still." So I've been a great example of that, because the older I got, the further I paddled. I ended up getting invited to a few races abroad, which is brilliant. I just got a taste for that kind of real ultra side of things and that challenge. I had a friend who did ultra running, and he got me involved in stupid running races as well, that ended up kind of doing 100 milers and running across Wales. In fact, the Dragon's Back's on now, and that was probably the biggest fun I've done. And then there was always this race, the Devizes to Westminster, and it was one that I did back in 2015. And we won that. That was the first mixed K2 ever to win it, and that was brilliant. That was nice to set a little bit of history for the sport and get a lot more girls, a lot more women involved in the sport as well. That was the hope that it would do, as well as pursuing that record. And then this monster still sat in the background as this 44-year-old record, and that kind of, some people said, "Oh, you can't beat that now because you need the conditions, and when the conditions get that fast, they're going to cancel the race." And actually, I kind of looked at it and thought, you don't need great conditions. It just needs to not really be against you. And as myself and a partner, Tom Sharp, who I'd paddled at the World Championships with, and we'd got 11 in the world back in the day. So we knew we could paddle well together. It's just whether we could still paddle well together and still tolerate each other after 15 hours of paddling. But we really committed to it, put our training volume through the roof. So we were doing 200 kilometers a week on kind of back-to-back weeks through the winter, in order to get that fitness, get that base in the bank. And then when it came to the event itself, we knew we were prepared for it. We knew it when had a great chance at it. And actually, from early on, I was pretty confident we were going to get it. And then fast forward 15 hours and 19 minutes something. I hope I got that time right. Yeah, it was really nice to see that 44-year-old record eventually be taken down.
Wow, that's incredible. And you took it down by some 15 minutes, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And I don't know if that's a lot or a little. It sounds like quite a lot when you get there, but when you're kind of still 50 kilometers out, and you've got that kind of 10, 15-minute margin, in my mind, I always think, okay, now I've got enough room for a mistake. Not a big mistake, but we can mess something up now
Mm.
and we'll still be on track. And even when we were coming into the city on the last bit, and we knew we were well ahead, we knew we just had to finish. But then you have the clipper boats come through, and I love that. A lot of people hate it, but I kind of love the fact that you have these trials towards the end when you're most exhausting. You see this boat, and it doesn't look like it's moving, but you can see the waves coming off of it. So you know it's moving, and you know it's moving at some pace. So we had these rolling waves all the way into Westminster Bridge, which was just that extra challenge, because you think, even now, if we were to fall in or something silly happens, we've only got 15 minutes to get ourselves back on track and get to Westminster Bridge before our opportunity passes us by.
Yeah. Well, as I say, many congratulations. That's a great record to beat. 44 years. will it be another 44 years until it's broken again? Who knows? I don't know kayaking at all. I don't really know that race very well. So I guess we just watch this space. I know this year it was curtailed at some point, wasn't it? Because of the
Yeah, that's right.
flow.
And it's great. The team who's organising that race now, they're brilliant. They will do everything they can to make sure the race runs. And now it's a team that doesn't shy away from the weather conditions. It only got curtailed this year because the Port of London Authority said no small boat craft could go on that lower section, and that's because the river was flowing so fast. You could see the lean on the river. It was moving that quick, and it's a shame that it got called short. I'm sure it won't in future years. That team are excellent behind the Dividers Westminster, and I know we've got stand-up paddle boarders entering that race for the first time, hopefully next Easter as well.
That would be great. I think the word has been put out. I think people have been able to put their names forward, haven't they, for that? So that's great. So we'll keep an eye on that race. But let's talk about the Thames 200 Ultra.
Yeah.
Obviously saw this on social media, knew people who were entering it. I know Craig quite well, and I also know the two girls actually who entered too. So this is on the non-tidal navigable length of the River Thames, and it's from, is it Lechlade or Lechlade?
Well, I keep calling it Lechlade, so I apologise to the residents of Lechlade if I'm saying that wrong. But
Yeah.
I'm hoping I've got it right.
Okay, it was only because Craig said Lechlade, so who knows? We apologise. Lechlade to Teddington, and it's open to all paddlecraft. It's a new race. When and how did you come up with this format? What made you think about this? What was your sort of driving force behind doing this race?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's two elements to it really. Is one that race it wasn't ever a race, so the event itself always kind of lurked in the background. And I remember one year going to do one of these long ultra races that got cancelled, and someone suggested to me, why don't you just do the length of the Thames? There's an old record on it, and it'd be quite a key thing to do. And it seemed like a great idea, but we weren't really set up for doing that, so we never did. And then a friend of mine, Billy Butler, he did the record attempt for it at the start of this year, and he contacted me during the week and said, I'm going to try and beat Steve Backshall's record on it for the non-stop length of the Thames. Can you be a witness for the Guinness at the start and at the end for the Guinness World Records? And I said, yeah, that'd be. Or he said, can you be there at the end? And I said, well, I can be there at the start. I had a free weekend, so I jumped in the car and started following this crew from Lechlade all the way through the 200 kilometers, and just filming as much as possible, taking timestamps for them. And then during it, Steve Backshall was a friend of mine's. He was there for dinner just by chance and was on the phone. And I recognized a voice, and he said, "Oh, can you slow him down?" And then we got just joking around, and then we got talking, and he suggested, what, we should turn this into a race. And I thought, you know what, that's a fantastic idea. And then it just kind of gained momentum from there, and just had a few people just suggested the fact that, you know what, this should be a race. And I've kind of stepping away from the racing side of myself over the last few years, and I feel like I should give back a little bit more to the sport. And one of those ways I can give back is to organize a race, organize an event. So I think I said on the briefing call, I think I've done over 1,000 races and I've organized one. So it's heavily skewed in the favor of experience on the racing side, not on the organizing side of things. But the actual model of it, the setup of it, or the design of the race, I stole from my ultra running world, and I've been part of that for the last few years. And one of the events that I've done is called the Arc of Attrition, which runs around the south coast path of Cornwall, and it's quite a lumpy race as far as up and down the hills around the cliffs of Cornwall. But they have so much hype around the start. It's a mass start. They've got signature checkpoints, and I always remember thinking, just get to the next checkpoint, just get to the next checkpoint. And it means you can travel down there on your own. And you just got to get to that point. You get your fuel, you get your drinks, you get your food, and you're set off to the next checkpoint. And that's all you're going for. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a race where someone could travel from abroad, get to the start, and be able to take part in it. And that's quite hard. A lot of races, or we've got few ultra races in the UK at the moment, and it relies on you bringing some friends and family to support you. And which is great fun. It's nice if you've got that support network, but you also start feeling a bit bad about, you're taking your own weekend away, let alone taking away everybody else's weekend with it. So if I could put together an event where if you've got that support, brilliant. Bring them along, let them be part of it, but not so that they have to. So I also had in my mind that a support crew could come and see you and wave at you and take photos, and then go and enjoy a cider in a beer garden somewhere along the Thames, whilst they just enjoy dot watching and seeing the cruise through and enjoying the race, and not have to drive like Colin McRae from one point to the next in order to get the food and drink to them.
Sounds like my husband's kind of support. Trent 100, he was off testing out all the peaked houses, pubs, and he was great support, but with his camera. But he went and enjoyed everything else as well. It really suited him, and he was the one who was trying the massage at the end first to warm it up for everybody.
It's test running everything. Make sure it all works okay. Brilliant idea.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a good kind of support to have. So this race, I'm guessing you would like it to be accessible to all, easy to enter, easy to do. You've put in place that there can be teams, you can do it as an individual. How do you think those ideas really will help people to get stuck into this race? Because obviously we want, we're passionate about it already. We want people to enter for next year. And, the easiest way is to be able to explain to them how to do it in a very sort of simplified way, not to be overawed that it's an ultra endurance, 200 kilometers. Don't think like that. I've had a friend who's on they live in Wales, and someone said on their Facebook group, can we enter as a team? I'm like, yes, you can. Do we have to paddle at night? No, not if you don't want to. Someone else can do that. So can you just let us, how could you encourage people to enter this race and not be sort of overawed by it?
Yeah, I think you gave a great summary of it then, and it's absolutely what you started to describe. It's a gateway to the ultra world. So if you're already at that level, if you already want that challenge, that opportunity to do a non-stop 200-kilometer by yourself or in a double is very much there. But if you're looking at it thinking, I don't know if I don't want to invest my whole winter to get ready for that next summer. I just want to do it. I just want to be part of it. Well, that's absolutely what this race is set up for. So the team side of things, which I expected to be popular, and it has been popular, it means that people can enter with 3 or more people. And we had teams of 4 and we had teams of 10. Now, I don't mind how teams approach it, because it's split up into 6 sections, 5 checkpoints, and the shortest one's about 26 kilometers, the first one. The longest section's about 37 kilometers. So they're fair distances still, but they're not so huge that you have to dedicate your whole life for the next year to get ready for it. It means you can enter it with friends, you can enter it with family. In fact, we had a family enter. I was so pleased. Team Russell, the Russell group, as I kept calling them, and it's brilliant. James Russell is the 3rd fastest in Europe at kayaking, so he's a proper elite level. Yeah, his mum and Mags the Lie in doubles did the first leg. So they did the first leg and then passed over to him. They were 20 minutes up on their schedule, but they were still about half an hour behind the lead by the time they passed on to Jimbo. But I thought that was brilliant. It was great. We had teams of canoe do it. We didn't have any stand-up paddleboarding teams do it, but we had every other combination. We had people reach out saying, can under 18s get involved? And we looked at it and we thought, what races have been before? Because we're not in it to kind of throw the rule book out the window. So we wanted to make it safe, but we wanted to make it accessible. So we came up with the rules saying, okay, under 18s can do it because they race through the day all the way through the year anyway, but they just can't paddle during the hours of darkness, which was great. It meant families could get involved. It meant younger ones at clubs could get involved. They just had to pass on to an over 18 to do the night shift. And then when the sun come up, the under 18s were back on the course again. So it really was a nice way of seeing how do people want to tackle it, how do they want to do it. We had some kind of family crews who would do odd legs, and someone else would do the even legs. So we had a crew from Tunbridge who did leg 1, then someone else did leg 2, then the leg 1 was back on again, and I think they just shared a car, which meant that the logistics was so much easier as well. So in my mind, that's another great way to spend your weekend. If you get to the start in 1 car or 2 cars, depending how big your team is, you can follow them down the course. You can see, just get ahead of schedule, get there ready for the changeover. One person passes the tracker whilst the other person passes them the keys for the car, and then one comes
Don't
the next.
forget that.
I did have someone was like panning down saying, did they leave the keys? I said, at least you can track where the keys are if they haven't, if they've still got
Yeah.
them on them. And that was another great thing, is to have the GPS trackers so people really knew where their teams were, who was coming in. We had the live feed. We wanted to make it accessible. But to go back to the race format, it's absolutely that. If it's a case of two people alternating all the way down the course, great. If it's one person does one section, someone else does another section. We had teams where you have a team of 6 and they did one section each. It's making it as accessible as possible so people can get that experience of night paddling if they want to. And some people just love that. They love that they did the night shift. They love rolling their sleeves up and just saying, you know what, I'll do the 2 a.m. till 6 a.m. section and just enjoy the night and see what it is. But people who don't want to paddle at night, great, you're part of a team that means you can facilitate that. You can have those options. So yeah, looking ahead to next year, I would love to see. Firstly, I'd love to see individuals taking on the challenge because that's brilliant. If they want to do the whole thing, we'll accommodate that and we'll give as much support as we can to help get them to the end. But if it's a case of you're looking at thinking that's quite a lot to take on as an individual, and it's even more so, I think, for stand-up paddleboarding because just the hydrodynamics, the boat speeds, you're out there for a lot more hours. If you can split that up into teams, brilliant. That's exactly what I want to see. Well, exactly the race that we want to facilitate for people to be able to access as much of it as they want to and while still enjoying it.
Brilliant. Well, from a stand-up paddle boarders perspective, there are a huge amount of paddleboarders out there who may have been paddling for years, want that extra challenge. That's been happening over the last few years, and they want to then do that extra length. There's the Trent 100, which was 100k in 2 days. You've got the paddle skedaddle, you've got 27k, I think. You've got the Norfolk Broads Ultra, which unfortunately is not happening anymore due to lack of numbers. You've got the Great Glen. So these are all things which, and they will break those races down as well. So people might be doing anything between 25 or 50k. And actually training for that, not easily. I hate to use the word easy, but, a hell of a lot easier than training for a 200 non-stop, ultra race. So I think that is really exciting, as I say, especially for the stand-up paddleboarders. And we know that some of those can just go on for hours and hours. So that's really exciting to hear. Now, the other element, of course, is paddling overnight. And having spoken to Craig on our previous interview, we know that that is a challenge. It was particularly a challenge with the locks, but it does bring that element of adventure, that other challenge, because, as you say, not many people, some people just never paddle at night. I love paddling at night. It's different. You have to use different senses. It's all about your balance and your sort of awareness rather than just looking at everything. So I really enjoy it, but there are people out there who may never have done it. How would you encourage them if they wanted to have a go at that? What skills would you say to them that they needed for that, apart from practice?
Yeah, I mean, practice is obviously the main one if you want to get out there and get used to it. But I also kind of say, really embrace the sense of adventure of this race because some people said to me, oh, we got people going the wrong way when they get to the locks. I'm not sure they want to go. I think Craig said he ended up in a marina. And I know some other people that they just carry on and they're at a dead end. And they said, are you going to kind of, for future years, you're going to mark the course better? And your initial reaction is like, yeah, that makes sense. But actually, no, I don't think I want to. I quite like the idea of people having to use their wits about them. It is an adventure. Most of it's fairly straightforward. It's kind of, you've got water in front of you, you've got land to the left, land to the right, keep going forwards. It sounds as simple as that, but there are choices to be made. And there is, if you've got your wits about you, if you've got your lights on, you've got to make that decision. But what's really nice during the event in the summer, that if you make a decision and it's a wrong decision, the worst thing you're going to do is lose time. You're not going to be in any real danger because the flow's not that strong. When you paddle towards a weir, you kind of go, oh, that's a weir. It's not a lot. That's annoying more than, oh my goodness, I'm getting dragged towards a weir. So you can turn around easily and paddle back against the flow because the flow is just not that strong. And that's one of the limiting factors of it is you don't get that advantage that you would in the winter, but it also makes it a lot safer, especially at night and especially if you're on your own. So that side of it is quite nice, that adventure side of it. But yeah, certainly, I love paddling at night. I love the fact that the bats start flying around and you kind of think to start with, what on earth was that? And you think, I can't be that tired yet. I haven't started losing my mind. But it does bring that extra level of kind of paying attention. And I find the night flies by. I find it's, very scenic. You get to see the sunset and then you kind of get that feeling when the sun's about to come up again and your body starts to wake up a lot more. I love paddling through the night.
Lovely. I'm tempted. So the kit that people used, I think you were quite I don't know if you've had much to do with paddleboarding or whether you've ever paddleboarded. I don't know that, Keith. But I know that you were quite surprised that someone did it on an inflatable, and his ability and speed, not just on the water, but obviously on the portages. It made it a lot easier for him to be able to chuck his board around. Any advice about kit to use, or do you think it's just people's personal
Yeah,
preferences?
I think absolutely that. I think what surprised me, one, it was great to see. I was over the moon to see the vast array of boats that took part in the event. So we had people doing C1 and stand-up paddleboarding on hardboards, on inflatables, had doubles out there, double canoes, double kayaks, single kayaks. So a full range of boats, which was brilliant to see. Now, I didn't know what would be quicker, what would be slower, what would be more or less convenient. Now, I know the guys with the solid boards taken a lot more care, and rightly so. And that was an advantage that the inflatable board had. But what was the nicest and most significant surprise for me was that he completed the course in comfortably in 32 hours and still made a few mistakes along the way. And we've got a cut off of 34 hours. So to still do all of that on an inflatable board and have a 2 hour buffer was brilliant to see. Because some of the feedback I had before the race was just it was impossible. And I said, "Oh, it's crazy. You know, you might just be able to do it in 2 days, but it's impossible to do non-stop in that time frame." Well, this guy, you know, I'm sure it's a lot more technical, but for me, it looked like he visited Decathlon on the way and picked up a board and a pump and just went, which way's Teddington? And he just cracked on and he completed it. And we had some people complete it in under 30 hours. So they were, I think, nearly 5 hours ahead of the cutoff, which is huge window of time they carved out for themselves. And Jan on the inflatable, it's still 2 hours ahead of schedule. So I do think there's an advantage to having the inflatable later on when he's tired because he'll worry less about hitting the side, hitting a post, hitting something like that. So that's an advantage. And it might find that just that lack of having to take that extra care meant he could relax a lot more. And
Mm.
these races often they're a mental strain as much as they're a physical strain, and you can get really frustrated with yourself, especially if you do something silly when you're tired. Whereas if you remove some of those elements that make you frustrated, you can relax a lot more and you can focus on working hard. And maybe that's what the situation that he put himself in.
Yeah, and I have to say, there's a huge amount of people with inflatable boards these days, and I'm sure lots of those would really, embrace this challenge. So next year, what differences would you like to make to the sort of the whole event? I've mentioned Trent 100 a couple of times, and it's just because it's probably one of my favorite events because it had a real festival vibe. It had everybody meeting in the middle. Everybody went off to the start, back to the middle, back, and then there was a party afterwards. And when you finished day one, you were celebrated, with a lei and a hug and it just had that real feel. Is that something that you would really like to? I don't know what the situation was, this year, and what differences you'd like to make for next year.
Yeah, so the difference to the race structure won't change tremendously. That's what I want to keep the same. But what I want to do is build the numbers because with the numbers creates that festival atmosphere, exactly what you're talking about. We want it to be a mass start, and we're going to have two starts, one at 10 o'clock, one at 2 o'clock. 10 o'clock to give that extra 4 hours window, so we've got 34 hours to do that. But we want as many people as involved as possible. What was really nice is when we had the kayakers coming through the stand-up paddleboarders late in the night because they started 4 hours back. So they'd see someone, they'd see some lights as they come past, and they'd get a friendly hello and a good luck. And that's with such few numbers that we had in this year. Once we've got the numbers grown so much, we want to create that atmosphere at the start and at the checkpoints. What I really love about the ultra runs that I do is I'll spend a lot of it on my own getting from checkpoint to checkpoint. But when you're at the checkpoint, then you'd see a load of friendly faces, and some are just leaving, and some are just arriving, and it's that whole kind of camaraderie. If you know what, we're all in this together. I've made checkpoint one. I'll eat my food quickly, and then I'll set about, and I might set off to the next checkpoint with someone different, and it's working with someone until I get to that next point, and that's what I love to see. And the more numbers we get, the more we'll see that together. I looked on the tracker, and it looked like there was three guys, one in a kayak and two on stand-up paddleboards. It was Gavin and Chris, and it looked like they stayed most of the night together, which was great to see. And with the numbers as they grow, we'll have much more of that. You'll see a light in front of you. You'll see a light behind you.
Mhm.
When you get to the checkpoint, you'll get that encouragement. and we'll have the volunteers lifting the energy when they get there, making sure that they're hyped up and ready to go and set about that next section. And for me, that's what makes it really exciting, when you can see those dots in the distance, and then the finish line celebration. If we get to the numbers where someone's finishing every 2 or 3 minutes, then that just creates that kind of real celebration, that real festival feel at the end of an event.
Yeah, and it should be a celebration at the end of the day, because you know what the paddlers are achieving, you know well enough, you know, to finish your 200, whether it's as a team or as a singleton, is quite, you know, amazing. So I think that celebration would be really lovely to have that after party and whatever. The I'm sure you've heard of the SUP 11 cities, but they're really sort of they have a lot of options for people, and I think you can paddle each day, and then everybody can paddle on the last day, which, you know, and I think the last day is something like 25K. I know this is not a day thing, but I just wonder whether that could be thrown into the mix, or whether that would complicate things. I'm just thinking on my feet, actually, just thinking about the differences between the two races. So something to
Yeah,
bear in mind.
absolutely. I want to take what other people are doing and what's working. I'm not looking to be massively innovative and come up with a whole new race structure that's never existed before. I want to take the best bits of races that I've been part of for the last 30 years and think, what do I actually like? What have I enjoyed in running and kayaking, and how can I put that all into one race, and how can I make that even bigger and better each year? And if I get advice, but to start with, we're just going to have 30 hours. And then I had some people say, you know what, paddleboarders can't do that. You're making that too tight. And it's brilliant. I don't know that. I'm from a kayaking background, but I'm keen to learn, and I'm keen to understand the different sports. And, you know, I'm more than happy for someone to paddle down it on an inflatable unicorn, as long as they can hit the check. I really don't mind. So when people ask me, can I do it in a K4? Can I do it in this? The answer is yes. But we've got our cutoffs for the safety of the race and for the sanity of the checkpoint support people. But we want to be as accommodating as possible for it. And if someone comes up with an idea on how the race could be better, I'm all ears. And if I think it's right, and if I can accommodate it, if it's good for if it's good for the sport, it's good for the race, it raises participation, and it raises the standard of what we're trying to achieve, then yeah, it becomes a no-brainer to include these things.
Brilliant. Well, I think you've got such a great first year, you know, under your belts, really. I think, you know, it's just onwards and upwards. I'm sure you'd like to give a couple of shout outs. We're just a few minutes away from our cutoff point ourselves. But I'd love to shout out, I'd love to shout out Sam right before you do, because she was instrumental in helping you to know what stand-up paddleboarders needed to be able to take part in this race. And the other person I'd like to thank always is Betsy Ray for doing her live coverage on, you know, that's what I do, that's what I love. I appreciate it when other people do it. So I'll put some links under the video, but that's Betsy Ray from Sup Racer and Paddle Daily, who covered the race brilliantly. So are there any people that you would like to really give a shout out who've helped, or, you know, were wonderful on the day, or just sponsors?
Yeah, absolutely. The list is long, with people who helped me, because I really have lent on people to help me put this race together. But the standout people are checkpoints. We had some brilliant checkpoints up at Lechlade, with the Cotswolds, the water park there. They made it accessible for us and made it easy for us to get started. The YMCA, the Hawker Centre at the finish line. And then we also had support from the army with regards to their boathouse for checkpoint 1. And then we had the Cokethorpe School was checkpoint 1, then the army, then we had the Dolphin Adventure as checkpoint 3. We had the medical and water safety team at checkpoint 4, and then we had Staines Rowing Club helping us at checkpoint 5. So it makes a significant difference for us. If we could have physical locations where people can get off, have a shower, get out of the elements. If it's been bad, like it was raining a lot, or then it was really sunny, we don't want people kind of exposed to the elements the whole time. So that made a difference. And then our main sponsors are Precision Hydration, who gave the fuel for everybody to get to the end, and Life Systems, who helped us make everybody safe whilst out on the course as well. We had a huge number of other sponsors. In fact, I've got them all on the back of my event t-shirt
Well
here.
done. Maybe we'll put a photograph of that underneath as well.
And it's a way of saying thank you to those guys, because without them, it wouldn't have happened. You know, we took an idea and we just kept running with that idea, and we wanted to make it as big as possible, and we really felt like we managed to achieve that. But we want to, you know, well over double in numbers for next year. Now we proved that it's a good thing. We've had great positive feedback from everyone. Now we just need to make this event massive, and then the bigger it is, it just makes it more fun for everybody. It means we can have that real festival celebration the whole way from start to finish.
It's a wonderful event. It's had a wonderful and very, very positive vibe afterwards. As you say, we can only see big things happening. We'll definitely keep in touch, and you know that we'll promote it and help in any way that we can. Next year, 23rd and 24th of August 2025 is your date for next year. And I'm sure you would love to be inundated with people asking you questions and really making themselves feel very sort of secure about what they're planning to do. And I would encourage everybody to have a go. And if you don't want to do it on your own, do it as a team. Team sports are brilliant, and it's just that encouragement. And yeah, it's like being in a family, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And you're absolutely right with the questions. The questions I've had going into this year have sparked the ideas to put information online, to do the briefing calls, to start doing recordings of the locks, which I started, but I run out of time for. So we're going to do all those things. And every time someone asks a question, I think that's a great question. If you want to know the answer to that, chances are hundreds of other people want to know the answers as well. So we make sure we roll those out and we kind of uplift that information for everyone.
Yeah, your website is brilliant, I have to say, for information. Where can people look? Do they just Google Thames 200 Ultra?
Yeah, I'm hoping. I'm not sure I'm quite up on the search engine optimization yet to appear on that side of things. But yeah, everything is under the branding of Thames 200 Ultra. So if you see this logo, you're in the right place. The main source of information are the website, which is thames200ultra.com. And then there's a Facebook page, a Facebook community, as I'm branding it, which is the Thames 200 Ultra. That's where a lot of information will go, and then it will make sure we kind of officially update it on the website, and there's an Instagram on it as well. But everything will link through the kind of the Facebook or the website. But Thames 200 Ultra, hopefully you'll find every information you need. If you can't, ask me and I'll try and answer.
Or our SUPjunkie. She knows everything, apparently.
Absolutely.
All right, Keith, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you, and we wish you every success. As I say, any help we can give. But for today, I really want to thank you for your time, and yeah, we'll hopefully meet you soon.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much. Great to catch up with you. Cheers, guys. Thanks.
Thank you very much.